Addicts, rejoice. Raise your glasses, needles, and cigarettes. Lift your vices, habits, and lifestyles. No one should tell you any different. So now we call friends, a supposed network of support, composed of liars, enablers, and thieves, among who you call lovers. I want it now, I want it now, I want it right now. While you're away, I get rid of all the evidence, hiding my darkest secrets, covering all of the tracks. Addicts rejoice, raise your glasses, needles, and cigarettes. Lift your vices, habits, now lifestyles. No one should tell you different. I need it now, I need it now, I need it right now. And all of you junkies, and all of you whores, come and get it. I want it and need it right now. Thank you.
But this poem is called I Can't Stay. I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous, we love you.
All right. We live in a generation of not being in love and not being together. But we sure make it feel like we're together, 'cause we're scared to see each other with somebody else. I've been with one girl in 2 types of relationships, and on the third one-night stand, she said, I love you for the 4th time. And all I could offer back sincerely was a high five. She was a dark-skinned stallion, and I called her a nightmare, which was an ironic misnomer, and maybe a little oxymoronic, because she was a dream and I was more of the midnight snare. I've never studied cardiology, but somehow I ended up playing with her heart. She called me Dr. Love, but my apathy left her scarred. I used my hypnotic words as heavy anesthetics. She became tranquilized with my charm like a dart to the neck. She fell down harder than a hunted elephant, and I was like a poacher when I took her ivory-colored innocence. She awoke from her trance, or from my trance. Her regret turned her heart black as ebony, and I took her ebony heart and that ivory innocence, and I turned them into piano keys, so it sounds symphonic every time I played her. She was deep in love, and I was swimming in lust. She was caught in emotions, and I was trapped in passion. She kept asking where we go from here, and I'm still trying to figure out what happened. She's trying to find out what our relationship is lacking, and I'm still surprised she hasn't figured out that I'm acting. She can't live without me. I can't sleep without her. She hates how much she needs me, and I think she gets too clingy. She's busy trying to keep me, but I'm already leaving. So cry if you need to, but I can't stay to watch you. 'Cause right now, your tears feel like cannonball hailstones right out of the sky through the roof of the garage. See, this house is no longer a home, and our love is a mirage. But you can try to touch if you need to, but I can't stay to hold you, 'cause my arms don't feel the same weight anymore. So stand there just until you can't wait anymore, and then stand a little longer where you can't take anymore, and you don't have to tell me how your heart can't break anymore, but I mean, talk if you need to, but I can't stay to hear you, 'cause to be honest, I already know where you're going with this. Something about how I don't want you, but you still love me anyway, and I don't feel the same, but I will feel flattered. So I gotta go before we hit the same pattern, 'cause you'll say you love me, and I'll end up lying and saying I love you too. All right, thank y'all.
For once, I lived for myself, and the days I spent were for me. Not clouded by lies and anxiety, not concerned with a lie to keep you complacent. And I began to hate you. A little seed began to grow slowly, burrowing up in my soft, bloody core into my brain. First instinct is to deny it. After denying, the roots splintered out of my eyelids, forcing them open to truly see. Everything I so proudly built will be demolished at the hands of complacency. In the future, it will be bright. We will not read. Computer beauties will televise the greats to us. No longer will 1984 be a threat. It will be an accepted reality. Fahrenheit 51, a long forgotten laugh in the scope of technology. And in the future, we will no longer relate. All on a plank, walking to the end of communication. Who needs speaking when technology tells us how we should live? But there will be the few of us, angry and bitter at things long gone, the romance of language, longing for humanity. 1984, 2019, 2054. But in the future it will be bright. We will know everything, and yet we will no longer relate.
This is my first time doing this. When I told my 3 children I was coming to a poetry reading night, my daughter Emma thought it was super cool and asked me if I would read a poem of hers. So I said I would be honored, and I am, to share it with you. My love is not what is normal to others. He has dark brown eyes and long white lashes. He is covered in hair, soft like his mother's. His white and gray hair is colored like ashes. His hoofs stomp the ground, his pastime of choice, galloping down the field and back to me. He lets out a shrill cry in a loud voice, frolicking happily for me to see. I love that he's picky about his treats. He favors horse cookies, not sweets. He loves healthy carrots and apples, not candy, even when they fall, becoming sandy. Now, carrots, whinnies, and stomps make me sad. My love isn't human, but a horse that I had. Thank you, and thank you, Emma.
My name is Pierre. Tonight I'll be reading a poem called Pillows. Pillows. Everyone has one. Everyone loves one. You have one. You love one. You cry into it when feeling sad. You punch it down when you are mad. You love the pillow, but does the pillow love you? Into whom does the pillow weep when going through a breakup? And whose head is cradled when they sleep? Certainly not the pillow's. Who does the pillow punch when mad? Who does the pillow hug when glad? Sad, sad, sad. The pillow remains there for you every night, its feelings of sadness existing despite. The pillow values you, but do you value the pillow? Is the pillow worth being valued? Are you worth being valued? What is it that gives you value? Is it your job, your money, your house, your car? Or is it your family that determines how valuable you are? Thank you. Well.
So I'm going to read, it's a flash piece from my collection, short stories that I'm currently working on. It's called The Boxer. All I have to do is go down in the fourth. I'm circling Joe now, my hat thumping against my chest, my ears still ringing from the last job I had barely fended off, from the crowd screaming in delirium there in that arena packed to the roof. And this is what I think of. I have to go down in the fourth, not the eighth, or the sixth for that matter, because that would be too dignifying for scum like me. That would mean I went toe-to-toe with Joe the Grinder, Nolasco. And nobody goes toe-to-toe with Joe the Grinder in Olasco. Not Matthaus, the one-time heavyweight champion Joe knocked out in the fifth. Not Luciano, or as the media now called him, the Iron Man who wept, and certainly not me. Some rookie whose only previous title was from a regional championship somewhere out of southeast Nigeria, who'd only begun to rack up the wins. But you see, Joe's longtime manager had seen a tape of the match that made me a contender. Over caviars and cigars, with his cash cow draped in silk, I imagined he had seen the tape. And he didn't like the thunder of my left hook, the patter of my feet on canvas, the hunger in my eyes that reminded him too much of Joe in his prime, and all I had to do is go down in the fourth. Theo told me so, over the phone. Last night, barely 12 hours before the fight, when the April skies wept a flood and Mama had called from the Atlantic, across the Atlantic, to tell me Donald, her favorite goat, had wandered off again. Uche, you've got to take it, mate. That's crazy money, Theo had said. That Cockney accent he's been trying so hard to kill since we moved to the States, springing to life and surging through the line and out the phone speaker in the living room. Every beat is out of place in that tiny Brooklyn apartment as my accent had been on that restaurant on London's Mare Street all those months before, where I washed dishes to pay for tuition, where I had celebrated an Arsenal goal on the big screen TV, and one patron, a Spurs fan, had gotten in my face and I had knocked him clean out and squared up with his mates too before Theo stepped in to lend a hand. I can't think about all that now because I had to go down in the fourth and there's only 20 seconds to go. Joe is circling me now. His mustache twitching. He's getting careless and he's swatting at me like I'm some housefly. And Theo is screaming my name from the corner, above the feverish roar of the crowd, yet what I hear is do it. Do it now, and I know I should. Set my chin up and take it like a man and send the money home to Mama to replace the jewelry she'd had to sell, to build a pen for Donald, and buy Amaka that dress she wants for Easter. But all I can think of now is Joe's face, how it has, mid-fight, transfigured into a confluence of images, of Papa's rabbit scowl and shimmering mustache when he stormed out the room he shared with Mama, into his beetle and into the sunset, leaving a trail of whiskey and stale sweat in the air, and a muffled whimpering from behind the bedroom door. Of Mama dropping me off at school a half-hour later, my baby sister strapped to her back with a lapa, stooping to level with my 6-year-old frame, staring right into me with eyes puffy and true. Make me proud, you hear? She'd said. Make me proud. Thank you.
Our next open mic person is also my co-host, Christopher Flakus. So bring it on up wherever he is. All right, come on.
I didn't realize I had to follow Obi, and if I had it all to do over again, I wouldn't, because that's a really tough act to follow. Man, I love that story so much. That last line is just, it's like the perfect ending. God. Okay. All right. So this is a short story, kind of spooky for Halloween, and it's from the perspective of a kind of middle-aged woman who's haunted by more than just her past. It's called Dead Mall. It was my ex-boyfriend Charlie who showed me how to break into bandos. He taught me lots of things: how to do stick and poke tattoos with threading needles and India ink, how to tune a guitar by ear. I wasn't a little girl when I met him, not by a long shot. I'd been around plenty and done lots of things, mostly things that made me feel dirty and ashamed, but it wasn't like that with Charlie. He screwed like it was the cure for all pain, like we could escape from this murky, miserable life into another, brighter place. Sometimes when we made love, he would scare me, jackhammering on top of me with that pained, desperate look in his eyes, and maybe I escaped through that too. Maybe I didn't. It's been long enough that I tend to forget what it actually felt like. I've got impressions more than memories. Some are clearer than others. I hopped my first train with Charlie just outside of Houston. We rode it down into Louisiana and spent a humid, hungry month in New Orleans just after Katrina. We went from one flooded home to the next, raiding people's medicine cabinets, scoring good free pills they'd left behind in their hurry to escape the rushing water. There were lots of calamitous firsts with Charlie. First abortion, first night in jail. Some real bad times, there's no denying that. He was toxic. I see that now. A fucking sociopath, if we're being completely honest. But I was naive, if not young, and determined to pierce him with my love, to infect him with it over and over until he transformed into a loyal, loving, good-hearted guy. The perfect guy. Of course it didn't work out that way, and even if it had, I probably would have stopped liking him. I've always been fucked up when it comes to men. I'm just attracted to trash, I guess. We split in '09, and by 2010 I'd heard he'd died. OD'd on the floor of a Super 8 motel off I-10. I didn't even know if he'd come back to Houston. A mutual friend informed me some months later of his passing. By then I'd missed his funeral. I really wish I could have gone. He was the kind of guy that had friends all over the country but was never really close to anyone. And you see, he called any old uninhabited building or house a bando, as in abandoned building. Pretty stupid, but I thought it was cute at the time. We'd break in and take pictures, get drunk, fuck on the floor, then heat up some food over his little portable stove. He always smelled like gasoline and campfire smoke, even right after he took a bath, which was rarely. He was tall and wire-thin, covered in winding tattoos of spiders' webs and knives, skulls, things like that. None of them were particularly well rendered. The ink was faded in parts, cloudy, blurred into a bluish green. Another thing I remember is that Charlie wore his pants baggy, always sagging below his butt. They were too big and had been torn so many times and stitched back together that they hung from him like a grimy skirt. But God, I loved him. Charlie's still fading from my memories, no matter how much I loved him. All I've got are bits and pieces left. But that night at Sunnyside Mall, that hasn't faded, and I don't think it ever will. The Sunnyside Mall had been dead for years, but in its prime, it was this glorious, sprawling commercial center just off 45, a halfway point between downtown Houston and the suburbs of Montgomery County. Over time, its reputation began to crumble. I remember reading about an elderly man killed in the parking lot, some kind of carjacking gone wrong. People stopped going after that, and gangs started hanging out in the parking lots instead of families. Charlie used to call malls the fallen altars of capitalism and temples of excess. He liked to talk like that, but he really didn't have a clue what he was saying, probably just repeating something he'd heard. He didn't understand how, for people like me who didn't grow up in the city, the malls were once so much more than that, special places. Before I dropped out of high school my senior year, I went to the high school in the suburbs of Spring. I remember begging my mother for rides down to Deerbrook or the Woodlands. I never really had plans beyond dressing up, maybe meeting with some girlfriends. When Charlie took me to Sunnyside, it was a cold January night, years after its doors had been shuttered. We scored some china and a pack of clean rigs, but had no money left over for a motel. I was nervous about getting caught, but Charlie assured me there wouldn't be a problem. I do this all the time, he said with his trademark bravado. It's my home away from homelessness. We entered through the old J.C. Penney's. The air was still cold, stale as the air in a tomb. It smelled like a mall, if only faintly, which surprised me. Apart from being a little stuffy, I could still pick up hints of cooking oil and cleaning products. That wax they'd used to buff the floors at night, I hadn't smelled that stuff in years. But there was also bat shit everywhere. Guano, I think it's called, and that grossed me out. Charlie called me a wimp when I mentioned it. A few little shapes darted through the air, chirping as we made our way down a frozen escalator. Our steps sounded hollow, echoing like the rhythms of a strange ritual. The full moon made everything inside appear the same pale blue color. It really was quite pretty, still and peaceful, but I also found it unsettling. We walked in silence past the husk of an old bridal boutique. There were still some mannequins in the windows gazing at us sightlessly, all of them bald, armless, legless, a few even headless. I'd never liked mannequins. There's something vulgar about them. These in particular had a grotesque quality, lifelike, or had once been. This only enhanced their ugliness and somehow our own ugliness as well. It was like looking at a terrible reflection. I held Charlie's hand, and I thought I could feel those prying, painted eyes following us every step we took. Charlie said the best place to sleep was in the old food court. From there, he explained, we would hear if anyone was coming and get out before they'd had a chance to spot us. I thought you said no one comes here. I said there's no security guards, he replied with a roll of his small gray eyes, but sometimes kids bust in to tag the walls. Harmless stuff, really. I've been coming here for years, but I did hear once that Mexican mafia dragged a guy and killed him in here last summer, so, better safe than sorry. I never knew if Charlie was telling the truth or just trying to sound tough, but I knew him well enough to realize that some of his most outlandish stories, the ones you'd swear were lies, actually were true. I didn't want to be there is the bottom line, but I'd sooner have died than let Charlie see me scared. I woke up abruptly that night, and we were laying in the middle of the food court where we'd fallen asleep while looking up through the glass roof at the swarming Texas sky. I could actually see the stars, which is rare for Houston. Charlie fixed the bigger shot for himself, so he wasn't really awake. He just lay next to me, sweating, breathing shallow breaths, scratching at his stubby neck. I was angry at him because he hadn't shared enough dope with me. I was about halfway through his backpack to fix myself another shot when I saw a large, bald man, fat, with skin so white it seemed made from the same flesh as the moon above us. His features had an odd, babyish quality, too young for the rest of his body. "There's someone here," I shook Charlie, trying to wake him. "He's looking at us." Then I began to hear it, as if my own voice had conjured it, the muddy murmur of conversation, the squeak of sneakers on linoleum, the dull roar of overlapping voices, except there was no one there but me, Charlie, and the silent blue man. The food court filled with cooking smells. I distinctly heard the sounds of soda pop machines hissing and bubbling. I could faintly make out music from the carousel in the distance, and the sound of video game violence in 8-bit emanating from a non-existent arcade. Despite the fact I was wearing Charlie's jacket, my teeth began chattering, and I could see my breath, blue and swirling as an exhaled hit of smoke. Am I remembering it correctly? I'm sure that I am, but somehow I'm not telling it right. I know what you're saying. You were on drugs, and yes, okay, I was on drugs, a lot of drugs, fair enough. But I've been on a lot of drugs, and nothing else came remotely close to this. This wasn't like that other stuff. When you take that stuff, you know what you're seeing isn't there, but this I couldn't tell apart from reality. I felt as if I were two places at once, or between places. And by this time, Charlie had started to wake up. I'd gone from shaking him to slapping his damn face, and somehow it just kept getting colder and louder, and I hadn't been that cold since Charlie and I rode the rails through Montana, that winter time, our bodies exposed to the elements. Here we were in Houston in the summer, inside, zipped up in sleeping bags, and it felt like I was left on the ice. I want to leave, I told him. It was hard to talk because my teeth were chattering like those little wind-up gags they used to sell at Spencer's Gifts. "Did you hear me, goddammit?" I said. "I want to go." "Don't be stupid, Gabs." Charlie sighed and laid back down. He was so stoned he must not have felt a thing. I started to cry. Most women my age, the age I am now, have settled down. They're plump and bored, married with kids. They do yoga and worry about current events. They're angrily Republican or indignantly Democrat, vegan, gluten-free, or they're trying keto for the 10th time as they calmly approach middle age without much to say for themselves, but probably not that much to complain about either. They don't close their eyes at night like I do and see blue-skinned ghouls standing over their beds. They don't take methadone or wear dentures because they smoked too much meth in their 20s and ruined their teeth. All I can say for myself is that for one night I slipped over some invisible border into a place beyond the normal scope of human life. Something unreal. And Charlie, though he never remembered it, was never quite the same after that night. We moved like deep-sea fish through our dark, illuminated lives, consuming what we could, surviving until we couldn't even do that anymore. The mall was eventually locked down, turned into something or other. I don't go through that part of town anymore. I'll drive an hour out of my way to avoid it. Isn't that silly? Sometimes I lay awake at night and I wonder what happened to everything that was inside of that place. And where are those murmurous spirits now, I wonder, if that's what they even were to begin with. The things we touched and were touched by, where have they gone now that they've lost their home? Thank you. I know that was kind of long. I appreciate it.
Prepare for a very underwhelming performance. No, don't worry. It'll be interesting, but underwhelming. No poetry. So, who here feels bad for Jeff Bezos? Nobody? Okay. So this is my pitch. You gotta feel bad for Bezos. No. Bear with me here. This is a sincere pitch on this. Like, you gotta feel bad for Donald Trump. Or, sure, he's a monster. Like, they're all insane though. But anybody who is monstrous, like, they're all part of the same world that we're in. Like, what have we done to let these folks down? Don't quibble too hard on this, like some people have been inclined to. It's just one particular metric of it. But think for a moment. Like, picture Tank Man or, I don't know, any other activist kind of thing. Who would you risk your life for? And who would be risking their life for you? Like, these are one small metric of, like, the degree of commitment in a friendship. 20,000 years ago, you lived, everybody you woke up, and you were surrounded by, give or take, 150 people. And every single day of your life, you worked with these people. They were all friends and family. They knew everything about you. They'd known you since the day you were born and vice versa. There's a finite amount of time in the day, and there's a certain economy to social interactions. You know, like, hey, how you doing? What's been going on? What you been working on? Like, there's a limit to how much you can communicate with folks and the amount of relationships you can maintain. So, and also that's a real ride or die posse you got right there, okay? Like, bear hops out of the bush and they're like, bitch, it's on. I got me and my crew, we're throwing down. We're at a point in the kind of like power scale of like society at large and any individual person, where one person, a single individual, has the power to exterminate like all mankind. For those of you who get the old movie references, like, they could pull a 12 monkeys on us and we're hosed. A lot of folks, they want to be like, okay, it's capitalism, or if you're from a different part of the country, it's the damn communists, or libtards, or conservatives, or it's the rich, or it's lazy people not wanting to work. It's none of those things. We're all kind of hosed, and any one person could be doing us in right now, you know? And if some 12-year-old edgelord can commit acts of bioterrorism, like, years from now, then you gotta wonder who else might work on that sort of thing. I mean, to speak nothing of, like, we got real-life Terminators these days. So, anyway, what to be done? What is there to be done about this? The world's a complicated place. How do I fix this? I'm one person. Right. Well, first, it's necessary to understand that Bezos is circling back to this. I know, it's a lot of jumping around. It all kind of circles back and connects. But, you know, I have like a captive audience. You don't have anybody else lined up to speak, so deal with it. Anyway. All right. Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. So, I'm going to focus on Bezos for a moment and why you should feel bad for him. Aside from, like, hey, he got divorced, you know, and even if you're like the richest motherfucker in existence, that's still an unpleasant experience, you know. Aside from like a basic sort of compassion thing, here's why you got to feel bad for somebody like that. If anybody in here won like $1 billion lottery, okay, you know, you're going to be like, peace to work, to your job, and then like, I'm on a beach sipping Mai Tais, cool, right? Nobody here is going to think, you know what I really need to do is work 100 hours a week so I can get like another $5 billion. You have $1 billion. You have everything you need. So Jeff Bezos is like the Usain Bolt of making money, you know? I had an interesting chat with somebody the other day. They were talking with somebody who was like a concert violinist or something like that. And they're like, I don't know how other people live, the violinists of saying this, because like their life is perfecting this one thing. Kind of an easier summation of Bezos, or a lot of people like that. The thing to remember is that money doesn't buy happiness, rather it's armor against unhappiness. This is like the loneliest person on the world. He's built a castle of immense wealth against the woes of the world, in addition to it's an addiction, you know, making more money thing. Sure, yes. There's some combination of those two, and without personally knowing the guy, you know, who's to say what the exact divide of the percentage is.